Why does Scraptrap have bones? I'm sure we're all familiar with this guy. Scraptrap, Afton, Jimmy Neutron, Peanut, Shank McGee, the list goes on and on. What I'm curious about is why does he have a skeleton? Funnily enough, it just dawned on me how strange it is for him to have one to begin with. Yes, William most likely had a skeleton as a human, unless there's something massive I just completely missed, but fast forward to his fursuit accident and suddenly he has less bones than a chicken tender. FNAF fans, myself included, just chalk this up to his bones being brutally crushed into powder, or broken by the spring locks, and then probably falling out somewhere, or just eroding over time. I mean, he was in a crusty room for 30 years. That's a long time to go without a glass of milk. So Scott ordered a boneless William. What's the big problem? The problem is that there seems to be a mix-up with his order in FNAF 6. On top of butchering our favorite furry, Scott also gave him back his skeleton. Why? More importantly, how? Last time I checked, you can't grow back your entire skeletal system, so what happened here? Well, my lovely little candle, I actually have no clue. I've yet to see anyone tackle this idea before, but there is one thing I saw while doing research for this video that actually seemed to hold some water. In a Reddit post made by Yes That Is Him on r/FNAF theories, they went over the various components and pieces that seemed to make up Scraptrap. They had a few whatever points, like the wires within Scraptrap being similar to the wires composing Ennard, the body proportions of Scraptrap being similar to the proportions of this guy from a FNAF 4 minigame, which I personally don't agree with, but I see where they're going. But then there's the stuff that actually caught my attention. They pointed out the similarities of these spare parts found in the minigames present on Night 4 of FNAF 4. The head shares a striking resemblance with Scraptrap's skull, which could potentially explain why Scraptrap's anatomy is so horrid. If it's a skull meant for animatronics, then of course it's gonna be gigantic when slapped on a human body. And if this theory turns out to be true, then that makes me hate Scraptrap just a little bit less. Scraptrap's eyes are also noticeably different from Springtrap's eyes. Springtrap's eyes look more akin to a normal-ish eyeball, whereas Scraptrap's iris seems to have consumed his entire sclera. This overall more gray look to his eyeballs very closely resemble the eyes of this endo, or whatever this thing is. I understand it's a pixelated minigame, so the colors can't be too complicated, but it's not like we haven't seen Scott do gradients before in minigames. He could have made it more complicated if necessary. The overall shape of the head with that noticeable dip between the eyes very closely resemble the crease of Scraptrap's 12 head. As perfect as this would be, I do have to point out that Scraptrap does have a nose, which is a pretty big difference from the endo head we see in FNAF 4. Either Scraptrap got his skull from another location, or maybe his skull was the only thing to survive the springlock failure. Either way, it irks me just how many things fit together only for them to fall apart. Sliding over to the arm, it's actually kind of funny that there's only one arm here. Similar to our one-armed murder furry, the only issue with this is that Scraptrap has 5 fingers while this hand has 4. And finally, there's the ears of Scraptrap lining up pretty much perfectly with the ears of the suit. The gray eyes of the mascot head definitely help with this. So we've established Scraptrap looks a whole lot like the random parts in FNAF 4. Now we have the painfully tedious task of figuring out how he got those parts. If the TV isn't lying to me, then FNAF 4's minigame took place in 1983, and thanks to the nibble of 83, we know it takes place in Fredbear's Family Diner. This date now anchors the existence of these parts to 1983. Since William absolutely bodies the classic animatronics in the FNAF 3 minigames, which I actually did a nice video about, we know it happens after FNAF 1. The most commonly agreed upon date for when FNAF 1 takes place is 1993, which means at the earliest, assuming FNAF 1 shuts down right after we're fired, William gets spring-locked in 1993 at the earliest. After being spring-locked, William pulls out his Game Boy and sits behind a wall for 30 years, then is swiftly cooked until golden brown by his own son. Sometime after the fire, he tampers with his suit, becoming the hideous creature we see before us. Assuming Springtrap immediately repairs his suit, that would make these spare parts at least 30 years old, which is a low ball since we don't know when they were manufactured. They'd most likely be corroded or oxidized to some degree thanks to the dust and age. However, I will say that the stinky yellow hue that Scraptrap has isn't exactly the same as a bunch of oxidized iron. In fact, they don't really look that similar, so I'll count this as another strike. Many theorists believe FNAF 6 also took place in 2023 thanks to the Henry 223 seen in the Insanity ending. This is the date we'll be working with because the timeline makes my head spin. If FNAF 3 and FNAF 6 truly happen in the same year, and FNAF 6 takes place at the defunct Fredbear's Family Diner, the same family diner from FNAF 4, then it wouldn't be that crazy to say William grabbed these parts from the trash near the diner or potentially within the diner itself. This particular picture of Scraptrap sitting in the back alley is what's really irking me. As we know from Scraptrap's voice lines in the game, William knew it was a trap but went in anyway.
I knew it was a lie the moment I heard it, obviously, but it is intriguing nonetheless.
Nobody would know this place better than Henry and William. It's not totally impossible that William just knew where spare parts were kept if they went undisturbed over the past 30 years. It sounds dumb to say Scraptrap went in, repaired himself, then left so he could be found in the alley, but he is found in the salvage on night 2. So maybe he's been watching us and knows we check outside the diner after every shift like we're told to do. Instead of sneaking in and not getting caught, why not just let yourself get taken in easily? As for his feet, I can easily see him taking them from Fredbear. Seeing as how both are meant to occasionally be piloted by real humans, it seems like a no-brainer on why he'd choose Fredbear for his new feet. And as for the arm dagger, yeah, you're on your own with that one. TLDR, this was a pretty cool theory. It had some sauce in the beginning, and even now, I really want this to be real. But the finger issue and the nose especially are the biggest things holding me back from giving this a gold star. Special thanks to our beautiful channel members, Rickade77 and Bouncing Ball. Subscribe, follow, join, get out of my sight.